break in. So, welcome everybody. My guest, I'm delighted to say today is, and I'm going to give this one here, Clarissa Kristjansson. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's close.
Yay! And I'm going to let Clarissa introduce herself. But before she does, I just want to say that one of the reasons I really wanted you on the show was that I could see a synergy. And although it's a kind of growing field of people realizing there might be a need here, we're still the invisible people, really, aren't we? Us menopausal midlife crazy women. So we'll move on to that in a minute, but please tell us a bit about yourself, Clarissa, and what you've been doing and why and what brought you here.
Sounds good. So thank you, first of all, Shirley, for inviting me on the show. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation. Well, I'm a midlife and menopause coach and mentor, and I'm a speaker, and like you, I'm a podcaster too. But I was not always that, of course. You know, that sort of happens with experience. And I was a corporate woman, quite a senior leader. I had 28, 30 years in corporate life. And in the middle of this wonderful journey that's called our menopause, I had a burnout. And I had to really stop and rethink and think about, well, what do I want to do with my life? How do I want to live now going forward? And I did a lot of work in mindfulness and positive psychology and started to realize how much what we're going through in midlife contributes to a burnout, to us needing to think about our lives differently. Yeah. And I think I was like lots of people, blind. You know, what's perimenopause? What is perimenopause? What is this? You know, I've never heard that word.
Neither had I. No.
But when I dug into it, I could see how much of what I'd experienced in anxiety, lack of sleep, was certainly that combination of hormone imbalance and just way too much stress in my life. And then a vile workplace, which of course is a contributing factor to burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much that you've opened up there for me. Where do I start? I think one of the things that you've touched on is, so you went into burnout, you dived into finding out more about menopause. I'm wondering if you were like me, because what happened with me was that I just was dismissive of this whole menopause thing. And I thought that was a cool thing to be, you know, because I don't know about you, but I think probably the kind of person I am, the kind of people that are drawn to me, might be similar in personality to the kind of people you work with. In other words, copers, people who do their job well, they're the ones that are relied on, they don't need help, and suddenly there's this thing that happens. And so I was in denial for years, but it sounds like you learned a bit smarter or quicker.
Well, I think what I would be saying is that I didn't know anything about it. I was very like you. I thought, oh yeah, you have to cope.
Yeah.
You have to be, what is this thing? Oh yes, this is something that happens.
Yeah.
And I didn't ever really think about this time of life. I knew that my periods were changing. I knew that I felt strange, but I never attributed it to menopause and thought this is something that makes me ill. It's just something that's part of life.
Yeah. And I thought that too, but I also thought, and I think that's where the mythology has been around this for so long, that it was just that your period stopped eventually. Hooray! Sorry. That's one thing to celebrate, isn't it?
But it is actually a bit of a hooray for most of us.
Yeah, it was for me. And that you'd get hot flushes, and that was all I knew. Never knew about anything else, and that's, I think, where people like you and me are kind of needed, because most women, if they're struggling in any way, they'll go to their GP, won't they? And there may be some enlightened ones out there, but the majority will say, well, let me just have a look. You can have antidepressants or you can have HRT. Which do you fancy? Or both.
Or nothing.
Or nothing. But that's kind of all you're offered, isn't it?
Exactly. And that was never discussed with me, that this could be menopause.
No.
It never even, that word was never raised in the conversations that I had in my health checks with my doctor, with the female doctor I had. She wasn't very nice to me, actually.
Oh.
She'd say things to me, I bet you're one of those people that eats chocolate in the supermarket queue. You know, instead of thinking I was possibly perimenopausal, I was like, no, I don't do that. You know, I was quite appalled, really, when she said that to me, because obviously I'd put on a fair bit of weight.
Yeah.
And then she was like, well, why are you not eating quinoa in the evenings? And I'm like, have you met my child? I'm just trying to feed him. So, you know, so she was not at all helpful. And then the older male doctor I had sort of patted me on the hand a little bit and said, your blood pressure's bad. It'll be bad forever. And that was kind of the support I had. And that, you know, there was this contrast, but there was none of that real understanding. Maybe you're in perimenopause. Have you thought about that? HRT was never mentioned. Not that I would have particularly have chosen that route, but things like that were actually never, ever discussed.
No, likewise. No, I'm glad I wasn't patronised, because to quite the degree it sounds like you were. But I suppose I never sought help, and that's here we go. A failing on my part. It's a failing on my part, because like you, I'd spent quite a lot of time in the corporate world, but I left it before I reached menopause. So I was already doing my own thing. And so when it hit me, I wasn't interpreting it as any kind of burnout, even though I think it probably was, because, you know, when you hit that age, it's not just about the hormones, is it? It's that your parents are aging, your children are reaching a stage in life where they're going through their own shit. Excuse my French, I'm sorry for anybody that rejects the swearing. And your body's doing weird stuff, and there's just things happening in your life where suddenly, for me, you kind of mentally think, well, when I get a bit older, things will calm down, life will be easier, I'll be serene like a swan. And that doesn't happen. But it never occurred to me that all of that anxiety and depression and worthlessness and forgetfulness.
Yep.
I just thought I got early onset dementia because my mum had it. It's like, oh, that's it. That's my path.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think I had a lot of anxiety, and I just put that 100% down to the work environment that I was in.
Yeah.
As living in Sydney, it's a long way from Europe. And I didn't have family around me, and I was a single mum. And I thought, well, this is all too much for me, and I'm trying to cope with all of this without realizing that menopause is a huge contributory factor to anxiety, to the weight gain. And there I was eating, you know, a salad about this size, you know, and trying to manage and going to the gym and thinking, why am I 2 dress sizes bigger? I don't understand. I'm not doing anything that contributes that. Hence the sort of doctor thought I was like chowing down large amounts of chocolate, and I wasn't, you know.
Yeah. And I found, I suppose it's a bit of a wake-up call for me, because I felt a sympathy for women that I'd worked with in the past when I was when I was still menstruating and all that stuff. He would come to me in this stage of their life, and they'd tell me about how they'd gained weight and they weren't eating more, and I used to think, yeah, okay. I just didn't believe it, because, you know, we're not actually allowed as women to have anything wrong with us. Oh, sorry, I could get onto a whole different ballgame here. But, you know, you were in the corporate world. That's why I left. And I saw an article just last week about a senior consultant cardiologist feeling like she has to give up her work because there's no other place she can go, because she's feeling menopausal. She can't cope with the environment that she's expected to cope in.
And I think that's when we might see some change in the medical profession. I'm similarly connected into a gynecologist in the US, and she has left to start talking more about menopause. So she's left medicine, having been, a female gynecologist, delivered, I think 10,000 babies or something in the Detroit area. And her colleagues are completely unsympathetic to the fact that she has also been going through perimenopause, completely blind to it. And she's like, I'm done with this. I'm going to go out here and start speaking about the change that needs to happen.
Yeah. Okay. One of the things that fascinates me about how your work and the way you do it, in some ways, is very different to mine, because I just stick at the head end of things. Like that's all I feel safe with. I'm okay with minds and thinking and anxiety. I can do that. I'm in my comfort zone there. But you dive into the whole shaboodle, don't you?
I do. I definitely do. And we definitely talk about the physical, because the physical is so tough as well. I think if we look at, there's a mental side, and that's just exhausting. And I think the quality of life when you're depressed or anxious, you can't sleep, or you can't work out where you're like, not let alone left your keys, but what your husband's called and person, and I've missed every meeting at work. That side of it is very tough. But we're recognizing that a lot of the physical symptoms are equally tough, and they involve other people too sometimes. So the whole area of libido and everything that goes on down there doesn't just affect us as women. It affects our partners. It can open up so much misunderstanding and pain in relationships, that we have to be talking about our physical symptoms very openly. And if you've had a hot flash, it isn't I'm a bit warm. It's like a furnace turned up inside you, and your sweat runs, your makeup runs, you feel awful, and people judge you. They think there's something wrong with you, or and so I think, and women judge themselves. So I think that the physical side, it affects us directly, but it also affects our mental well-being. So it's a vicious circle, really.
Oh, completely. But you talk about libido. I don't know. I think there's still a taboo here. Like, sex is everywhere. It's on our TVs every night. People, I mean, it's like a porn movie in every soap these days. And yet, when it comes to us older women, we're led to believe that we're still meant to be at it like rabbits, and if we're not, well, there must be something wrong with us. But you talk about libido, so do you mind sharing a little bit?
So I talk about libido from a complete perspective, because what I'd like to say before I talk about women is that men go through a male menopause too. Right. And sometimes what's going on is that it's their testosterone that's dropped right off, and they don't want to play either. So it isn't just a female thing, it's a couples thing. Yeah. So we need to understand that it works both ways. And sometimes that brings up doubt in women's mind and start thinking, he's not interested in me, he's having an affair, and all kinds of weird stuff that go on there. Yeah. But yes, for women, what we need to recognize is all three of our hormones that govern our libido are changing. So we've got estrogen and progesterone, which means that we are less able to relax. I mean, progesterone is our relaxing hormone. That's its role in the body, to make us muscle relax. It helps us sleep, feel calm. That drops like a stone. I mean, we're talking about 65% reduction in the amount of progesterone the body makes. So that's dropped like a stone. Estrogen falls, and estrogen plays so many roles in our body, and particularly in lubrication. That's why we get wrinkly and we get stiff joints, and of course why we're dry and itchy. And that can mean that we just don't want to be touched. We don't want to be intimate if we're very dry and very painful. So, and then testosterone can also start falling, and we make testosterone as well, not to the same level as men, but that if we're lacking in libido, it's often the testosterone that's fallen. More than the estrogen is the dryness and the itching, and progesterone is we're just not mentally relaxed. But it's the testosterone that makes the libido go in women too, and it makes us feel very tired. So if women talk about exhaustion and fatigue, it's not lack of sleep, it's often low testosterone. And getting testosterone prescribed on the NHS, well, good luck. is the answer. They only prescribe it to women who are transgender, or to men, but they don't willingly prescribe testosterone on the NHS. You actually have to go to a private clinic if that's your case. And so that makes this whole libido thing quite complicated, because you've got all these three hormones interplaying with each other. And that just is compounded by the fact that you're probably not sleeping very well. Hot flushes, well, when you're hot and sweaty, the last thing is that want is another hot top body anywhere near you, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then we can feel not nice. We've put on weight, we've changed shape, which we do. It's part of aging. We aren't ever going to be self-life things that fit some sort of social image. We are changed, and a lot of women have issues with that. So the libido issue has many threads to it. It's not as simple as I'm dry and itchy, I need lubrication. There is a whole host of things going on. And then on top of that, we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it to our partners. And so it just opens up big chasms of misunderstanding between people. Very, very painful.
Yeah. I love that you shared all of that, because there's so much was in that, first of all, there's that I'm dry and itchy, therefore I need lubrication. That's the male solution that we've just kind of internalized, isn't it? That's their solution.
Well, yes and no. Actually, we should always lubricate, because it's very easy to have tears in the vagina. Well, we don't know that even before we're menopausal, and clearly if we are dry, we're likely. And they, of course, heal and scar. So we don't particularly want that sort of scarring inside the vagina. And of course, estrogen itself makes the vagina tighter and drier, but the loss of it does that. So lubrication is important, but it's not the only part of the story.
Right. So I know I'm going to want to come back to this. People think she's obsessed with sex. We never knew. But this is one of the things I love about you, because you're the only person I know that really takes this on publicly, which is why I really wanted you to come on, because I could talk to the cows come home about irritability and mood swings and depression and anxiety and blah de blah de blah de blah, but I've never gone into it. So the other thing that was important, and I will come back to the lubrication thing, but when you said about testosterone, you're not going to get that on the NHS. I think up until that point when you said that, I was probably thinking what most women listening or watching would be thinking, which is, oh, well, that's HRT, that's a hormone, therefore it's in HRT. But what you're saying is it's absolutely not.
No, you'd have to, if you went to a private clinic, you could get HRT. And that could be prescribed to you, and you can take it. Usually it's done as a gel or a sort of a cream, and you can get it. But your doctor isn't willingly going to prescribe that to a heterosexual midlife woman. And I've got that on authority from somebody I've been working with who's a leading sex and intimacy coach. She's a psychologist, and she's extremely well known, Dr. Laurie Beth. And she said to me, look, you won't get it for love nor money, really.
So when I do know women that have had HRT, but I always assumed they were getting from their GPs.
Oh, HRT will give you progesterone, estrogen, you'll get on HRT, but
right.
Testosterone, no.
Okay, so right, I'm with you, yeah.
And a lot of women don't get prescribed HRT. They have to sometimes ask for it, and a lot of women are starting to go to private clinics as well to get what they want, because you're not always getting it on the NHS.
No, but it isn't the entire answer either. And I think that's the other thing with the way menopause is approached. In fact, the way the whole of women's health is approached is single quick fixes, like take a tablet for this, do a stretch for that, drink this shake for the other.
Yeah, without knowing whether that really works or not. And obviously what we're going through is complicated, because we're probably at the same time, as you know, people are very stressed. We can be very close to adrenal fatigue. By the time we're midlife, we've got a lot of responsibilities. And so we're fixing a small portion of it, which is, as I describe it, as a bridge to the other side. And that's good. I mean, if you are having extreme difficulties with mood or with hot flushes to the point where you are really waking up at night soaked in sweat, changing bedclothes, of course you have to take a different course of action. But there is a lot we can do in our lifestyle, in the way we eat, in our exercise, in our mindset, to come through this and know that it will pass. And it will pass. And for a lot of women, it's 4 or 5 years, and then we are on the other side. We may still have hot flushes. We may have that right to we're 80. And there are women who still have that, but not to the same intensity.
That's quite true. I can testify to that. So yeah, so I still get heat. And I'll still often lie outside bedclothes. But it's not quite as bad as it has been. So I can testify to that. But I think the key thing that you're saying, I think that we're both saying, is that it's multi-dimensional. So I think that's the other thing, we feel like we failed if we go, so say we go to the doctor, we get HRT, and then we're still feeling rubbish, and then we go back and they give us antidepressants, and then we're still not feeling great, and there's a sense of failure if you try one thing and it doesn't work, whereas actually just get it all. If everything is what you need, and get everything.
I think, and that's the personal choice part in it.
Yeah.
It's not for me or for you or anyone to say this is wrong or this is right. We have to go through this in our own way.
Yeah.
But we can do so much ourselves if we eat better, move better. Oh, there goes my dog.
Hello, dog. What's the dog called?
Her name is Minnie.
Minnie. She doesn't sound very Mimmy. She sounds quite maxy.
She's not mini. She's not mini in size. She's medium sized, and she's very loud. You can hear the little dog downstairs yipping, and so she's decided to just yip back.
Fair enough. That's fair enough.
Yeah. But I was saying it is this is right. It's multidimensional, and we can do so much ourselves to support ourselves from a dietary perspective and from a stress management perspective. Those are probably the 2 biggest things we can do to really big, bold steps in overcoming this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think the earlier you take those steps, the better it is, having been someone that it took years to even think, do you know what, I think I might need someone to help me with this, and then you look back and you think, oh my God, I lost all those years because I kept thinking I can do this, there's nothing wrong with me, instead of going, do you know what, I don't have to live like this.
And we don't, and it's just, and there's a lot. I mean, there's so much we can take control of, and that is the hard part sometimes, because I think you're right. You mentioned people wanting to be a quick fix. Well, yes, can sort of tidy up around the edges, but somewhere along the line, the recommendation is to come off HRT, and then a lot of those things, if you have a poor diet, if you don't move enough. If alcohol isn't our friend, and if we don't resolve all of those things later, they're just going to be there anyway.
So how did you get into, sorry, we're all right for time. Are you all right for time? Are you all right?
Yes, I'm fine for time.
I'm sorry, I know you're here in conversation. I feel like I'm just going firing questions at you. But most of you, while you're here, why not? So how did you get into the physical side of things? Because that was not your background. You're in corporate. What made you go down the path that you went down?
Well, I began to realize let me roll that one back. I've been interested in mind-body medicine for a long time. And I think that I realized that for a person to be whole, we probably need to look at the whole part. And I was very inspired by work that had been done at Harvard Medical School back in the 90s, how Herbert Benson and his team had pioneered mind-body medicine, and one of those things was actually called Mind Over Menopause. And then somehow, in the midst of all this noise and all the rest, all of that body of work kind of just frittered away. But when you actually go to that book, it has a need to be updated. But clearly, in the way that they had thought about this, they thought of the patient as a partner, and having the ability to manage their mind and their lifestyle choices. There was, and that for me felt like a kernel of, wisdom that was being lost, because not many people were focusing on the mind, and a lot of people were focusing on symptoms. But if we could take a holistic approach, that might allow people to actually move forward. And that became for me really, really important, to marry my mindset work with some of the key physical dimensions, particularly around sleep and diet, and being able to open up about libido and other symptoms that we find incredibly hard to discuss.
So because you'd had that interest, when you started to get symptoms, I'll be surprised if it happened straight away, but was there a kind of dawning, like a little voice in the back of your head that went, oh, hang on a minute, I've read something about this? No.
I think that came after all my symptoms. That happened a lot later. And so it was when I was working and doing a lot of mindfulness and mindset coaching with women, and I was seeing a lot of patterns emerging, that a lot of these women who were coming through to me were midlife. There was a distinct pattern to what was happening in their lives and the things they talked about. And as we got well into that, there were clearly physical things as much as there were mental things. And that's how my interest into digging deeper into this started.
I think that's fascinating. I mean, from my personal perspective, I've only recently, literally since COVID, started really doing anything with diet. Even that, because for me, the fascination was suddenly reading, I'm sure it's been there for ages, about the gut-brain axis. So the minute the brain is mentioned, I'm in there. Like, why? What's happening? What? You don't mention the brain, I'm like, la, 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 can't hear you. So is that where your dietary guidance or advice or knowledge goes to? Is it?
Definitely. It's definitely around the gut-brain axis, and very much about healing gut dysbiosis, because I would say the average Western diet does everything it's not meant to do. And I know from years and years of working in marketing, all about snacking and snacking habits. I was trying to get people to do more of it, not the other way around, that women consume a lot of snacks and a lot of sugar. They really do. And I'm unaware. And if you add into that the amount of sugar that's hidden in our food, there are a lot of us who are suffering with gut related issues. And one of the key things to us to remember, that we need to process and eliminate excess estrogen out of the body, because it's the imbalance between estrogen and progesterone that causes a lot of the common symptoms. And if we're not processing this properly, then we are either allowing that to circle back into the body or go into the lymphatic system. And we don't want excess steroids inside our lymphatic system, because it lays the foundation for hormonal based cancers. And that is, something women don't think about. So having a healthy gut is going to allow that correct processing. It's also going to be important to recognize that serotonin is made in the gut, and that's a key happiness mood hormone. Estrogen is a key component in the production of serotonin. So obviously having a good healthy balance is important, and keeping what are called fake estrogens out of your system, because they come from your own stomach fat. You can produce them, and they also come from toxins in food and chemicals, etc., that we take in. So we don't want those in there mimicking estrogen and creating more imbalance. our guts are really important to maintain the integrity of them, and to have a healthy diet that's rich in phytoestrogens. So we're taking more estrogen in than we might on a normal poor Western diet. So a plant-based diet with pre and probiotics, things like flaxseed that gets talked about a lot, they're rich in phytoestrogens, which support a better hormone balance, a healthier hormone balance for us. And obviously having a healthier gut prevents candida overgrowth as well. And thrush is very common in midlife women. And that's just a yucky thing to have. I've had it. It's really vile. Lots of women have had it. And the problem is you can take Diflucan for a while, but it can only be taken for a while, and then you have to have a break because it's toxic to the liver. So healing your gut is a very important part of being well in lots of ways. And having a healthy gut, my final point, is your pelvic floor. Because issues with your pelvic floor can be related to a poor gut. And so if you have a gut that's not working very well and you're having some yucky problems there, then you need to actually have a healthier gut and hydrate more, because that's actually going to help your pelvic floor issues.
Interesting. Right, I love that. I mean, I'm kind of thinking that maybe there's some people listening who have gone, what? What's a phytoestrogen? What am I? So if you were to just break it down simply, I know because I've started reading into it, so I've got a sense of it. But honestly, as I say, I only did this. I'm actually really grateful because of COVID, because I suddenly realised I had all kinds of things going on. Again, still not connecting them to menopause. And I thought, my gut really is not healthy. And I knew exactly as you said, I was eating all the sugars.
Yes. Cut out your sugars, take away your refined sugars.
Yeah.
And it's the advice we've always had, take away sugar, watch for hidden sugar. So that's like, obviously we've all probably eaten a little bit too much chocolate now, and no one dies from having a treat. I mean, an 80-20 rule is a good one to follow, but cutting back on all that hidden sugar. They're in lots of processed food. If you eat a lot of pre-ready-made meals, you buy a lot of pasta sauces, they're great for convenience. They are loaded with sugar. Low-fat products are loaded with sugar because fat gives good taste. But when we take it away, just avoid all that and try and eat a diet that is rich in plant foods that are, I mean, organic's expensive, but at least try and buy locally grown or good quality, and really a higher fiber, plant-based diet with little bits of added protein, be that animal or whatever you like, fish, then you can do that. And dial back on the pastas and the white rices and these things. All of those are just converting straight to sugar in the body. So it's the good nutrition advice that we know, but it's so important at this time of life.
It is, but the reason I wanted you to really emphasize that is because if you've not done it, or you don't do it, or you're thinking, and that sounds so dull, it sounds like, really, I want to have a good, that classic, I'd rather smoke until I'm going to die drinking, that kind of mindset. It does sound like it's really dull, but I can testify, because I love all those things. Pasta, I could have lived on pasta. Like, how am I going to give up pasta? How is that going to happen? But I haven't given it up. But as you start to experiment with, okay, so I'm not buying processed foods, I'm not buying processed meats, I'm just having plant-based, fruit and yogurt and vegetables, which today with hello Minnie, come and join us. Sometimes we have the cats.
Oh, she's so noisy today. She's on full patrol.
She's not careful. I'm going to do some hypnosis. That'll shut her up.
Yeah. She doesn't want to come on the show. She does.
Why not? Why not, indeed. What starts to happen is actually, I mean, I can tell you, my sense of well-being is immeasurably improved from having changed it. I just, you've got to try it, and it really does. I'm not saying I don't. have my moments, I do, but I really notice the difference, and then it makes me go, no, I'm going back to
exactly. And I think a lot of women suffer with bloat and feeling sluggish and tired, and a lot of sugar does that in the diet, and we're not aware of how much we're eating. So if we can dial back that and have more pre and probiotics, we can have those from yogurt. Yes, if you like sauerkraut and kimchi, they're hard work. I mean, I know it's very in and trendy, and I would say to people, look, it's hard work, but if you can try a little bit, do. You know, and taking things like omega-3 fish oils, really important, because they're also part of healing our guts and helping us to stay balanced. So everything we do, everything anybody's ever heard about good nutrition is so important at this time of life, because it's about hormone balance.
Yeah. So what would be your top takeaway if you're going to tell people to do one thing? So say someone is not even sure, like maybe you and me, like you don't even realize you're in menopause until you're really in it. What advice would you give them? What's your top tip?
My number one advice is track your symptoms, because we can't have conversations with anybody until we know what's going on. And there are some pretty good apps out there. There's My Sister, and I like My Sister. I think My Sister is a good app if you want to use an app.
Yeah.
And part of the reason there's a little community. I mean, it's all kind of got fandangled bits to it, but tracking your symptoms, when they occur, what you have, how severe it is. And if you can make a side note of when it happened. So take an example of a hot flash. Did that happen after I've drunk red wine or coffee? Well, maybe you can do something about that.
Yeah.
You know, so that is the first place to be, because if your symptoms are bad, it's no good rocking up for your 7 minutes at the GP and sitting there and kind of going, well, these things happen. But if you've had a bit of a track, and you can use paper ones too, I mean, it's not, if you're not an app person, but you can go to GP and say, this is what is going on with me. I think I'm in perimenopause. I'm having problems here and here. What can you do to help me? And what that does is it puts you back in a power situation where you're not pushed around, dismissed, or just shoved some medication. And that is the very first thing, because it's the basis for a conversation.
I think that's excellent advice. Very good. Very good. Well, thank you so much for being my guest. I've learned so much and really enjoyed talking with you. It's been great.
Well, thank you, Shirley. I've loved coming on and just having this conversation. I mean, it's endless, really.
Oh, isn't it? I mean, this is like Loose Women, only infinitely better, really.
It is.
Maybe you'll come back and we'll do something else again, because we are so much in the same space. I'm sure that people that are listening to my podcast will benefit from what you've got to say. So I hope you'll come back.
I'd love to come back, and maybe you can come on mine too, which is a little bit more mindset-y and out there. yeah.
Don't ask me any of the physical stuff, because I won't. Yeah, not even multiple choice. Don't go there.
No, we don't. we leave that to the gynaes and the sex specialists and the rest to do that bit.
That's okay. I'm okay. I'm on safe ground then. Okay, so lovely. Have a brilliant rest of the day, and thank you. Bye, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed and taken notes, and reach out for help. That's also the most important thing. Take notes, but reach out for help. Either, to us, to your GP, to whoever, to everybody. Just shout, stand on your roof, scream, cry, whatever. Okay, it's been great. Thank you so much, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.